it's a great honor for us that Professor Moses is here, and he will be talking about a great business opportunity today. And Kenya has a long-term relationship with India and the subcontinent and Pakistan. अहमद ज़हीर साहब, आपको पता है हमारे जो कैंटीन में जो हमारे हेड हैं कैंटीन के, he is from Kenya.
Oh, is that? Yeah. I've had the honor of visiting Kenya and going to Mombasa and also to Malindi and enjoying Malindi. So I know Kenya fairly well because I'm a mariner. Used to be in the Navy. So 3 times I've visited Mombasa, and then I've been to Tanzania also. So I'm well aware of that.
Yeah. Asante sana Zahir. So you know a little bit of Swahili.
Yes, and in your Mombasa there is the Bamburi Park, which I went to.
Yeah, I stay in Nyali.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, that's good. So you've been in Mombasa several times.
2 times, just 2 times.
2 times. Karibu Kenya tena.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
But your great leader Jomo Kenyatta was there, and this is a long time back. In '73 I was there, and then again in '76.
All right. That's good. So I don't know. Can you be able to start?
We will be starting in 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes. That's fine, Abdallah.
So, how many people have joined, sir? Like
22 people.
People are coming.
Yes.
Jamil Anwar Saab from Ahmedabad. Wow, Dr. Saab. Assalamu alaikum, sir. Abdul Rafi. Charan, Ihsan, Absarul Haq, Faris. Wow, Abdul Moiz, KPK. So a lot of people. Abshayed Iqbal is there. So people are coming, and inshallah. At Zahir Saab, there's a lot of Indian Pakistani community in Kenya. These people migrated to Kenya and Africa like 50, 80, 100 years ago. And they are traders. And some of them are very interesting entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And you see, Dr. Moses will be talking about the case study of the Indian immigrant, Farooq Jiva. Farooq immigrated to Kenya, and he started a very interesting social entrepreneurship business.
Actually,
it's a very interesting case.
In the early '60s, when Pakistan was doing quite well, there were a lot of people who were coming from Kenya to Pakistan also.
Yeah.
They brought a lot of business from there to Pakistan.
Oh, that's fine. So that's when Mombasa used to be quite vibrant in terms of trade.
Dr. Moses, the Vice Chancellor of your university is a Muslim lady, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, she is. She's called Professor Laila Abdallah Abu Bakar.
Oh, so she's a Muslim professor. She's your Vice Chancellor. Wow.
She is our Vice Chancellor.
Can we sometimes invite her to talk to our women and people like this?
Yeah, what you can do, we can be able to talk later, and then I can be able to ask her to do that.
Yeah, you can ask her to talk to the people of Pakistan, the woman in particular.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. I'll be able to talk to her so that she can.
Yes. Let me open my laptop for a while.
No problem. So Abdallah, are you there?
Yes.
All participants are requested to please.
You're going to do it from your side.
Yes, we are doing it from Pakistan. The screen will do.
The screen will do. Okay.
Yeah, Professor.
समीर शम्सी अपने नाम के साथ सीरियल नंबर लगा लें, सैयद जुल्फकार अली अपने नाम के साथ सीरियल नंबर लगा लें, मोहम्मद अहमद शुएब अपने नाम के साथ सीरियल नंबर लगा लें, मोहम्मद मुजम्मिल अमीन भी, जिन लोगों के नाम के साथ सीरियल नंबर नहीं लगा वो काइंडली नंबर लगा लें।
ये मेरे नाम के साथ लगा हुआ है।
बस हम साथ साथ अटेंडेंस ही मार्क कर रहे हैं ना आप लोगों की, इसलिए रीनेम भी करते रहे साथ साथ।
समीर शम्सी और सैयद जुल्फकार अली लगा लें, जिस रीजन के वरना रीजनल कोऑर्डिनेटर लगा लें। स्टार्ट करें।
Dr. Moses, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
You're welcome.
डॉक्टर शाहिद नहीं है यहाँ पे?
Ji, Abdullah, I think he's going to switch on his laptop.
I think we can wait for 1-2 minutes.
Yes, we could wait for 1-2 minutes.
If any one of the participants would like to share his experience, his or her experience, he can. He or she can. Just raise the hand.
Okay.
How's the weather in Kenya, Dr. Moses?
Sorry?
How's the weather in Mombasa?
You know, I'm based in Nairobi. I travel to my family in Nairobi. You've heard of Nairobi, the capital city of Kenya?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
How's the weather over there?
You've been to Nairobi?
No, I have not been to Nairobi, but I have some distant relatives who live there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Nairobi is a capital city of Kenya.
So how is the weather over there? Is
It's
it hot?
very cold. At the
hot?
moment, it's very cold, very cold. Very, very cold, and we are having some lockdown.
Oh, all right, because of the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, sure. We are having some lockdown. In fact, right now, the curfew is about to start in the next 1 hour.
All right.
Yeah, until...
Dr. Start the screen, please start the share screen and do the presentation thing.
Thank you.
All right, just a second, Abdullah. I'm just sharing it.
Sure.
Just a second.
But हमारे डॉक्टर मोजेस कीनिया से हैं, ये टेक्निकल यूनिवर्सिटी, ही इज वर्किंग इन द टेक्निकल यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ मोम्बासा and he is our star member from Kenya, and he will teach us a case study from the Kenya.
All right, I'm just sharing this introduction also. Just a second. Can you see the screen?
Please start the slides of Dr. Moses.
All right, just a second. All right, can you see it? Is the screen on?
Yeah,
yes.
That one. Make it a full screen, please.
Yeah, I'm doing now.
Sure.
Can you see it?
Dr. Moses.
Yes, Dr. Moses, over to you.
Okay, fine. So can I be able to start?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Now, participants, thank you very much. It's evening in Kenya, and I just want to share one of my area of specialization. That is my area of research. That is entrepreneurial orientation. Now, in this particular presentation, I'm going to share about the constructs which define entrepreneurship. Yeah, I know you've been, you got my profile. I'm a senior lecturer at Technical University of Mombasa in the School of Business and specifically in entrepreneurship. And I lecture at the Technical University of Mombasa, which is a public university. So when we are talking about this entrepreneurial orientation constructs, now next slide, please. Next slide, please. We would like to be able to see how this entrepreneurial orientation is all about. So firstly, we need to look at thinking and acting entrepreneurially. You can go to the next slide, please. Now, when you talk about thinking, how to think entrepreneurially and the value of thinking entrepreneurially, what comes into the mind is entrepreneurship. Who is this an entrepreneur? Now, basically, when you talk about entrepreneurship, you know, we are talking about beginning the business. How do we generate an idea? Now, entrepreneurs are those ones who have generated ideas. But thinking entrepreneurially also has to do with most of the aspects. Like, for instance, from the word entrepreneurship, which is a process, an entrepreneur will perceive an idea. So in this particular context, for example, if you start a small business like a garage that are trying to repair the vehicles, you know, and then you're financed by the family, that is an idea. You've got that passion for that idea. We say that, you know, it's entrepreneurship, and you are an entrepreneur. So thinking and behaving entrepreneurially can help a person to have a career. And that's why sometimes in most of the researches that have been conducted and adopted by most of the governments, they are insisting on this entrepreneurship. So when somebody is beginning an idea, we say that, you know, you are acting entrepreneurially. Next slide, please. Now, thinking entrepreneurially, you know, leads us to some of the models that have been developed. And these models basically describes how we should be able to think entrepreneurially. Now, one that was developed by my good professor, Professor Michael Morris, about entrepreneurial mindset model, thinks about the attitude and behavior. And from this attitude and behavior, we are talking about the professional. And this, like for instance, the attitude, you can effect change. There is better way. Opportunities are everywhere. Embrace innovation, change and growth. Failure is learning. Now, this is the attitude, and this attitude is based in the mind of somebody. You have to do a change, you know, think about changing the society. And how do I make that change? How do I add value to the society? You come up with a solution to a problem. Now, this will lead you to the lower box that indicates about the behavior. You act on that opportunity from the attitude that you have. Continuously innovate, and then persevere, leverage resources, act as a gorilla. Now, acting as a gorilla means, you know, trying to do that entrepreneurship, anything that comes in. And that's why sometimes we say that entrepreneurs are mad people, because you do things extraordinarily, navigate risks. Now, this leads to professionalism. And this professionally is areas of entrepreneurship. Now, we are going to see soon that most of these areas come from entrepreneurial orientation, like corporate entrepreneurship in public sector, family business, entrepreneurship in profession. And then this will be able to exist in different circumstances like the family, church activity, community, personal relations, and then dealing with the life challenges. So this particular model by Professor Mike Morris basically tells us about how we can awaken our entrepreneurial spirit and acting entrepreneurially. So this leads us, next slide please, this leads us to, you know, what we talk about. Next slide please, Taskin. Next slide please. So this leads us to that entrepreneurial orientation genesis. So what is this entrepreneurial orientation? How did it begin? Now, basically, in this particular slide, I'm sharing a little bit about the origin of entrepreneurship, beginning from the 1730 when Richard Cantillon, you know, one of the founders of entrepreneurship, thought about entrepreneurship. And they coined this particular word entrepreneurship, which we say an entrepreneur is somebody who undertakes, and you basically undertake, you know, to do something. And that undertaking, you must get a return. And that's why sometimes the economists will tell you that you have got 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and then entrepreneurship, which is the 4th factor of production. And you have to be paid for, you know, what you've done. Now, in subsequent years, we have discovered that entrepreneurship, there's an aspect of innovation that has been generated into entrepreneurship. Like, for example, talk about Alexander Graham coming up with a mobile phone. You know, that is innovation. And in entrepreneurship, we distinguish an entrepreneur and a business person by the virtue of an entrepreneur being innovative. You know, an innovative is creating new solutions where probably they never existed, or improving what already existed. And then talk about the combinations of factors of production that have been brought about by Bill Gates, about the Microsoft products. Think about the softwares that Bill Gates has come up with. This is totally a new way of doing things. And then think about the BlackBerry when it came in. It was a type of a mobile phone, but nowadays you've got smartphones. So all of this, they tend towards what we call innovation. Now, the common elements of this conception of entrepreneurs are that they do something new. And by doing that new, they seek opportunities that probably sometimes nobody knew about them. But this entrepreneur, after coming up with the new things, you know, they seek that opportunity and later they put it into the market. Wow. And then it becomes something which you can be able to purchase. And then we say that this is entrepreneurship in being. Now, because the world is changing rapidly, non-entrepreneurial organizations are at significant risk of being left behind. So you must think entrepreneurially. Even during this period of COVID, you know, we need to have the solution. So sometimes they are talking of this the COVID period as bringing in a silver lining for new things to come. So anybody who seeks that opportunity, we say is the entrepreneur and has got some sort of entrepreneurial orientation or inclination. So even cursory self-examination of the products and services we use daily reveal that many of these were not even invented 5 to 10 years ago. So you get new things are coming up. Even the smartphone that has come up, this thing never existed. And maybe Corona is the one that has made us, you know, to stop a little bit about innovation, but there are people who are coming up with a new innovation. Think about where would the world be in the next century? We don't know. You know, they are talking about 4th industrial revolution. Next slide, please. Now, I've given the example, this Michael Dell, with his coming up with the mobile phone when he was a college student. And and you know, now the Dell computers, not mobile phone, but Dell computers. This has really revolutionized the world. You remember Dell, and now we have got the MacBooks. We are now talking about even now the laptops now. Most of the laptops now we are moving to iPads, you know, and we don't know where the world is moving on. So all of this they are using what is known as entrepreneurial orientation or inclination. Next slide, please. Now, when we talk about this entrepreneurial orientation, we have to think about the constructs. Now, I coined the construct so that we can be able to say constructs basically means the building blocks. And in research, we discover that constructs, are sometimes known as variables. They build up in the variables, or we talk about them to be measures. So when you talk about this entrepreneurial orientation, we need to think about the process, practice, and decision-making styles of organizations that act entrepreneurially. So whenever we get an organization that can be able to, adopt these particular constructs that we are talking about, this organization is termed as being having entrepreneurial orientation. Or sometimes they say entrepreneurial inclination. They are inclining towards entrepreneurship. So we have 5 of them: autonomy, competitive aggressiveness, innovativeness, proactiveness, and then risk-taking. So these dimensions are also relevant to individuals. And sometimes we say that most of the researchers, they can exist as in the individual entrepreneur and also within the firm. But an individual entrepreneur has to bring these particular dimensions into the organization, because an organization cannot just bring it, cannot just come up with it unless somebody can be able to steer it. Next slide, please. So this leads us to some of them. So let's talk about autonomy. Now, whenever we talk about autonomy, now we say that an individual or a team of individuals within an organization have got freedom to develop entrepreneurial ideas, and then they see these ideas to completion. So whenever you come up with an idea as a team or an individual, you look at them towards completion, we say that you are autonomous. However, in some of the organizations, we can be able to say that sometimes it requires some sort of independence. And what is this independence? You require some sort of sitting down, having some time to think about it, and then you should not be controlled. And that's why sometimes we say that entrepreneurs don't need to be controlled in the coming up with an ideas. Now, sometimes autonomous also connotes an aspect of acting not within the realm, or we can say within the roots of the organization or the roots of the country. And that's why sometimes you will hear people indicating that entrepreneurs are mad people. Why? Because entrepreneurs can break the traditions within the society. You can be able to discover that some of them are hawkers. Like when you come to Africa, you get that we have got so many hawkers. Hawkers are referred to those who sell their products. They move from one place to another without even subscribing to the license from the state. So they don't follow the traditions. And then sometimes some large organizations promote autonomy by empowering divisions. Whenever we have, like you've got an organization, maybe you've started your hotel, you can give your workers some sort of freedom to do things. We say that is a state of autonomy. Then the next one, next slide, please. The next one is the competitive aggressiveness. Now, the competitive aggressiveness in this particular case is the tendency to intensely and directly challenge competitors rather than trying to avoid them. Whenever you try to outshine, say you've got your shop around, maybe shop A and then shop B, and then maybe your shop A, the shop B, you're competing with shop B. So whenever you try to outshine this shop B, we say you have got competitive aggressiveness. That is, you've got some sort of techniques which you are using to be able to outshine that next shop. So aggressive moves can include like for instance, price cutting, increasing spending on marketing, quality, and production capacity. So you can be able to, basically have some price cutting. Like for example, sometimes you might discover that an article, say for example, a mobile phone, you might get one of the maybe shop is selling at maybe we can talk of if we use dollars, say $60.7, and the other one is using is selling it at $59.7. You'll be able to discover that this is the price, but if you look at it, the margin is too little. So we can be able to say that this is aggressive, the same product. So an example of competitive aggressiveness can be found in the number of attack ads. Like for example, let me not use the political arena. In this, I did the political arena. Within the farms, you can be able to discover that, like for example, give examples of the two mobile production farms in the world. We talk of the Samsung, and then we talk of the Apple with the iPhone. And sometimes they attack one another. And even for those who have been following, last year, Samsung was taken to court by the iPhone, the makers of iPhone, Apple. Why? Because maybe there were some features which they used them. And that is nothing but some sort of competitive aggressiveness. And then establishing reputation is also another aspect. Like for example, you get into what we call some joint ventures and alliances. Why? Because you want to come together so that you can maybe compete another farm so that you have some competitive aggressiveness. Now in this, sometimes we talk of the theory of competitive advantage that can have a place, or maybe you've got a lot of resources that you can be able to use to build the competitive aggressiveness. Now managers thus must be wary of taking competitive action that destroy opportunities for future collaborating. So you need, in terms of collaboration, as a manager, whenever you're talking about this entrepreneurial orientation at individual level, managers should be worried about that. Let's move to the next slide, please. So the third next slide, please. The third construct, we're talking about innovativeness. Whenever you hear about innovativeness, I had indicated that this is doing things differently, some sort of creativity. In entrepreneurship, this is the heart of entrepreneurship. And basically, an entrepreneur is distinguished by an aspect of being innovative. So you pursue creativity and experimentation. Whenever you are innovating, you are experimenting. And sometimes it can fail, sometimes it can succeed. So we see that either way, innovativeness is aimed at developing new products, services, or processes. And in entrepreneurship, we basically like using the word innovation or innovativeness. So in this particular case, we build on new things. Like for example, talk about the FedEx. The FedEx, I want to give an example of the FedEx. FedEx is a courier that basically, they're in the mail industry, the mail delivery industry, or we talk of the parcel delivery industry. So they, at some point they came up with an innovative way of ensuring that their customers can be able to monitor and also know about the temperature, the location, or humidity of the package which they are sending. So for those ones probably who are sending those particular products that are prone to the temperature or humidity aspect, they can be able to feel as maybe the package is moving all the way to the distribution center. So this type of innovation is welcome addition to FedEx lineup because they are doing it differently and the customers subscribe to it. Now, also talk about Google. Now, Google at some point, they thought about the Gmail, the new features, those who have been using email so much. And even at the moment, they're coming up with the new ways of doing things. Now, one of the features for the email was designed by an engineer. Why? because they feel that they want to be able to have some sort of new things which they can be able to put into the market and probably have the competitive advantage that we have spoken of in the other construct. Now, the fourth construct is the proactiveness. Next slide, please. The proactiveness. Now, when you're talking about proactiveness, we are talking about the tendency to anticipate and act on future needs rather than reacting to events after they unfold. Sometimes, within the nature, we need to be proactive, even human beings. But in entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur needs to have that tendency of proactiveness. Now, proactiveness is manifested in the firm in form of seeking new opportunities, introducing new products ahead of competitors, and eliminating operations, because you need to be proactive. You need to come up so that your competitor can be able to feel what you're putting onto the market. And that's why sometimes you'll see some entrepreneurs can be able to, say, organize for the shows so that they can be able to show the new products which they have come up with. A proactive organization is one that adopts an opportunity-seeking perspective. Such an organization acts in advance of shifting the market. They can be able to shift the market demand, when they discover that the demand is not in a particular place, they can go somewhere else so that, they have people who can come and purchase their products. Now, the tendency of considerable perseverance is sometimes, they want to be adaptable and willingness to assume responsible for failure. That is proactiveness. When you have seen that you have failed, you go back to the drawing board as an entrepreneur to see, where have I failed? That is a heart of being proactive. Also, by embracing opportunities that others fear, that makes you to be very much proactive. Now, the last one is risk-taking. Now, what is risk? Now, sometimes we find out that risk, there are uncertainties. Next slide, please. Risk are uncertainties. And these uncertainties, cannot be estimated to happen. You cannot be able to account for them happening. So risk-taking is a tendency to engage in bold rather than cautious actions. Willingness to pursue opportunities that have reasonable likelihood of producing losses connotes what we call risk-taking. Now, like for example, talk about the Starbucks. Now, Starbucks is an American coffee farm. They use it in the most. I adopted it. I used it from the literature. Right? In Eastern Africa, where we talk of East Africa as one of the largest exporter of coffee. Yeah, we've got different types of coffee. So whenever they get into the American market, they add value on them, and then they become what we call the Starbucks. Hello?
Just a second. I think we have a problem. I'll do it again. Just a second. Yeah.
Sorry for that. So talking about the Starbucks. Now, Starbucks, basically, what did they do? They were able, we have got two types of coffee, the two brands of coffee, the Arabica and the Robusta. And Arabica is mostly produced in Kenya. Robusta is in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is in Eastern Africa, and also Tanzania. And Uganda also have got some type of coffee known as Arabica. So basically, this particular type of coffee, the Starbucks did what is known as value chain addition. They tried to be able to combine these two coffee to come up with the type of coffee that they call it Starbucks. So this instant coffee has long been viewed by many. And in fact, when you come to Africa, they sell this Starbucks coffee, and apparently it's manufactured in Africa. That is risk taking. They have taken risk. They have taken the risk of combining these two brands of coffee. So although a common belief about entrepreneurs is that they are chronic risk takers, research suggests that entrepreneurs do not perceive their actions as risky. Why? Because most of them take action only after using planning and forecasting to reduce uncertainty. But uncertainty seldom can be fully eliminated. So here we discover that most of the entrepreneurs, they take risks. But however, in this particular assertion, we discover that they take what we call calculated risks. Yeah, what are calculated risks? You know, like for example, you are a small enterprise, and probably you want to open, you have a hotel, and that hotel is operating in a particular neighborhood where maybe the income is very little. So you'll be able to subscribe to the pricing within the economy of that particular setup. You don't have to introduce a very big restaurant in that particular place. So that is taking calculated risks. Now, I've given an example a few years ago that about the Shell International. That is a company that sells petrol, or sometimes in America they call gas. Now, they wanted to deal in Russia, but however, they could not be able, to get there. Well, why? Because it was a risky affair. So probably maybe they were not, those customers in Russia could not be able, to purchase their oil, and also probably the situation that existed in Russia. So risk taking is a factor that is quite important within the farm. So with this literature that I'll be able to describe from spotting it from the literature, I want to basically take an example of Kenya, the research that I did in Kenya, which actually indicated that these are the true constructs of entrepreneurial orientation. That is innovativeness, risk-taking, autonomy, competitive aggressiveness, and then proactiveness. Next slide, please, Taskin. Now, with this particular research, basically there were 200 farms. It was around 2013. And we basically wanted to see, whether these particular farms are adopting what we call this entrepreneurial orientation. The next slide, please. Now, just before that, just move on to the next one, and then we'll come back to that. Just after that, please. So in this particular research, what happened is that we basically used the factor analysis. What is factor analysis? Now, factor analysis is a technique of analyzing data that in most cases, they use exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis to be able to develop constructs and measures of the variables. Now, these constructs are very important. How does this factor analysis work out? Now, this factor analysis is generated by different statistical packages. You can use the starter, you can use this SPSS, which in it, we have got exploratory factor analysis, which basically with the constructs, with the items that you've come up in the questionnaire, you can be able to run a factor analysis, which can be able to pair up these factors. So we did that factor analysis, and we did what is known as factor loadings for this entrepreneurial orientation. Now, what did we discover? Now, we basically had these factors coming together and having a factor loadings, and these factor loadings were more than 0.5, and basically that is 5% significance level. So these were those factors. For instance, autonomy, facilitating free flow and capture of new ideas from employees, rewarding employees. Risk-taking is a positive attitude. So this was quite interesting, because we thought probably it was going to go to the risk-taking. Recognize individual risk, again, was another construct, another measure that was quite interesting to be in an autonomy. So probably the farms, are autonomous when they recognize individual risk-taking for the willingness to champion new projects successfully or not. Also, allowing employees to practice their skills freely without supervision to produce more. This is autonomy. Supporting employees who come up with new products. This is autonomy. So we see that in the literature, basically autonomy, cannot supporting these particular employees. Now, competitive aggressiveness. Now, within the competitive aggressiveness, stimulating new demands on existing products in the current market through aggressive advertisement, taking bold and wide-ranging acts like sales, promotion, competitive prices, and distributive channels to the market products. This is competitive aggressiveness. Now, strong tendency to increase market share by reducing competitors through competitive market strategies. This is also competitive aggressiveness. Spending substantial amount of financial resources to sales promotion, and then actively searching for significant opportunities to improve market share. So you could be able to see the competitive aggressiveness. Most of the aspects are towards promoting the products, promoting an aspect of the business. So you could be able to see that within this competitive aggressiveness, the strong tendency to increase them, they're taking bold and wide-ranging acts in the sales promotion and competitive came out to be the highest with a very strong coefficient of 0.839. Then next, the factor loading, we had, next please, we had proactiveness, sorry. Within the proactiveness, you can be able to see that we had the constructs, the dimensions such as identifying new markets to sell products. Now, this identification aspect is being proactiveness, continuously improving the quality of the product to be competitive, investing new venture recently, and creation of the new autonomous units to enable the vision of the work. So these aspects, makes the firm to be very proactive, and you will agree with me that most of them are aspects of proactiveness. With the second measure, which is continuously improving the quality of the product to be competitive, having a very high coefficient of 0.823. Now, innovativeness. Now, within the innovativeness, the aspect of developing new types of the product, frequent trials of new techniques of manufacturing goods, firm is creative in the method of operation, investing in developing appropriate technology to produce high quality goods, carrying out product improvement always. So these are the measures of innovativeness constructs. And you could be able to see that though most of them were quite, average, we can say moderate, you can see the investing, developing appropriate technology returned a high coefficient of 0.715. And then lastly, risk-taking. Now, risk-taking, likelihood of an event happening, you could be able to see that propensity to take risk, investing expensive and risky activities is very high, supporting great deal of tolerance for high risk investment, and then favoring bold and aggressive posture to maximize the probability of exploiting potential when faced with uncertainty. This aspect, quietly resulted to the risk-taking. So you could be able to see that most of the coefficients within the risk-taking, they were quite, strong, indicating that they were appropriate constructs. So this factor loading indicates to us that these are, can they be part of the entrepreneurial orientation constructs, and by extension, the measures of those constructs. So it's quite interesting to find out that these aspects, brought together by factor loadings coming together to cluster in each of the constructs resulted to us, indicating that these are the true, constructs of entrepreneurial orientation. Next slide, please. So with that, what do we say? How can we be able to build entrepreneurial orientation within the firm? Now, we need, from the manager's perspective, a manager, in this particular case, we are talking about an entrepreneur. Sometimes we usually say that an entrepreneur is a manager, but a manager is not an entrepreneur. So from this perspective, I'm making the assumption that an entrepreneur is a manager and is the person who will steer that enterprise. So the first aspect, steps can be taken by managers throughout an organization by individuals to become more entrepreneurial themselves. So this entrepreneurial orientation can be adopted by most of the entrepreneurs. for the managers, it's vital to design an organization system and policies to reflect the 5 dimensions. So it's important to some aspects to have a policy for that. And most of the authors will tell you that, most of the scholars will tell you that these are the true constructs of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial orientation. Now, is taking sensible risk rewarded through raising bonuses? If you are a manager, do you ask for that? Do you raise money? If you want to do risk, taking sensible risk rewarded through raising bonuses, you'll have to think. You'll have to compare the amount of the amount of revenue the firm is getting. Is it going to be advantageous for you? Now, next, other organization characteristics such as corporate debt level may influence EO. Do corporate debts level help? Think about the debts that are being put within the organization. Next slide, please. Now, building an entrepreneurial organization still. Now, examine some performance measures. How does it perform? Look at, like for instance, how risky is this particular venture? How innovativeness are we? You should, as a manager or entrepreneur, you should be able to think about that. Also, understand how the firm develops and reinforces autonomy. How do we put autonomy? How do we also foster this autonomy within our environment? Now, if it is innovativeness, how can we gauge it? How can we put it? How can we come up with the new products? Is there budget allocation for it? Now, most of the enterprises, small enterprises, will be able to see that, they don't sometimes do continuous innovation. So how do we do it? Especially, do you have patents for the firm? Have they obtained what we call the patents? It's very important. Whenever you come up with an idea, patent that idea. What is patent? Patent gives you exclusive right. If it's a manufacturing firm and you've come up with an idea, it gives you exclusive right, to produce that particular product. Now, similarly, individuals should consider whether their attitudes and behavior are consistent with the 5 dimensions of EO. Think about your attitude. And that's why we said you remember in Professor Morris, the mindset, entrepreneurial mindset model, where we talk about the attitude. What are the attitudes of an entrepreneur? What are you thinking about this particular idea? And that's why sometimes we tend to think about, in most of the entrepreneurship literature, or whenever those who have read about entrepreneurship, are entrepreneurs born or made? Sometimes there are those characteristics, and these characteristics, some of them are within entrepreneurial orientation constructs. So the attitude of the person. Now, next is the employee making decisions that focus on the competitors. If you have got employees, are they making the decisions that are focusing on competitors? Are they doing things differently? Does the employee provide managers with new ideas? And this is sometimes what we usually say, that within some organizations, which we've got employees, and those employees are known as entrepreneurs. Who are entrepreneurs? These are entrepreneurs who work in other organizations. They want to make sure that they promote ideas within that organization. So think about that. Then, is the employee making proactive as opposed to reactive decisions? Now, reactive decisions are those decisions that you are doing them because the circumstances that forced you to do. Like, for example, at the moment when the COVID is quite rampant in the world, the reactive aspect of most of the companies is that they are producing the PPEs. They are also producing the masks, because that is to react on what is happening within the society. But if you're proactive, maybe you're thinking about the future. Probably there might be another virus. God forbid, you are not saying it will come in, but do we think of the future, what will happen? So each of these questions will aid employees in understanding how they can help to support EO within the organization. So with this, you can be able to say that we are building entrepreneurship with, orientation within the organization. So think about how can I be able to nurture risk-taking behavior within the organization? How can I be able to nurture what we call proactiveness within the organization? How can I be able to nurture competitive aggressiveness? How can I be able to nurture what we call innovation? And lastly, how can I be able to nurture autonomy within the organization? So all of these aspects are going to build up towards your organization. Next slide, please. So with this, we can be able to look at the aspects. What are the key takeaways that we can be able to talk about within this particular aspect? Now, the building entrepreneurial orientation can be valuable to organizations and individuals alike in identifying and seizing new opportunities. So you have to be able, to build up entrepreneurial orientation. Now, there's a case which I discussed recently about the Honeycare Africa. This Honeycare Africa, was started by Farouk Jiwa. Farouk Jiwa identified opportunity in Kenya about how good can we be able to keep honey. And he came from very far away, from India. And then he built up entrepreneurial orientation. When you look at those aspects that you have indicated, like autonomy, competitive aggressiveness, innovativeness, autonomy in a way that he consulted the farmers and able to conduct training. And then competitive aggressiveness, he saw an opportunity, from other beekeepers who were probably doing it different, doing it in a very archaic and traditional way, by introducing what we are calling the new ways of rearing bees in the new beehives, in Ladstroth. And then innovativeness, again, with the new beehive, and then proactiveness, and then took a risk all the way from the other part, and then concentrating on beekeeping. That was a very big risk that Farouk took it. And later he succeeded. So with that, I would say that, supporting of entrepreneurial orientation constructs requires us to have an entrepreneurial mind, which is core to building up entrepreneurship. With that, thank you very much. So unless there's any question or maybe any suggestion or any aspect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. That was a very comprehensive presentation.
Thank
We
you.
do have a few questions.
Please.
Roman, Yusuf, if you could please type your question in the chat box, it would be great.
Hi, can I speak?
Yes, please.
All right, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Moses. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Very well. Just two questions. One is when we talk about giving autonomy to the employees. So
yes.
Aren't we risking making future competition for ourselves? Because normally I've seen owners being very risk averse in this field, that they don't want to give too much autonomy to the employees, because they think that if they give too much autonomy, then they might become competitors in the future. Secondly, particularly pertaining to Africa, when I see a lot of business reports on BBC and all, so there are two things that are coming up. One, probably the entrepreneurs landscape is going very well in Africa. But secondly, we hear a lot about rampant corruption over there as well. So how much is a hindrance to entrepreneurship? The corruption is there's a.
Thank you very much for your question. What I can say about autonomous, acting autonomous. I totally agree with you. Sometimes it's not very good, in some future to have a lot of autonomy for your employees. Now, the reason is that if you leave your employee to be able to be autonomous, empowering them so much, at some point you can be able to be leaving an organization to them. So I totally agree with you that in some aspect, you as an entrepreneur or a manager, you should be able to gauge how autonomous you want your employees to be. And sometimes in some organization, you can be able to discover that a lot of autonomy, makes, if we be able to give a lot of autonomy to employees, sometimes you can be able to be leaving the organization to them. They can be able to take over from you. And that's why sometimes when you look at most of these organizations, I would like you to be able to read about before Steve Jobs, before they were able to come back to Apple. What happened is that they started Apple with Ozaki, but at some point, what happened? They left the organization because the venture capitalists whom they had been able to engage, they took over the company. So, and the idea were with the Steve Jobs and his colleague. But what happened? Later is when they bought back the so-called the Apple. So in this particular case, I totally agree with you. To some level, you should not be able to give autonomy to your employee, because in future, they might be able to take up the organization, and it might be risky for you as an entrepreneur. So how do you do it? You need to control the freedom that you're giving to employees in terms of some aspects. And that's why some organization, you'll discover that in their trade secret, most of them, what they do is that they can be able to reward employees very well, so that this particular employee cannot be able to leave the organization. Or another thing is that they sign an agreement. They sign an agreement with that particular employee, such that, when he leaves the organization, he is bounded by that agreement which they have signed. And then on the second one, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of corruption especially in developing countries. That is not even in the developing countries, even in the developed countries, there's corruption. However, this corruption sometimes, affects the way entrepreneurship can be able to go about. So I agree with you, and maybe I don't have a better answer for that. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. We have Amir with us. He would also like to ask you a question. Amir, if you could please go ahead.
Please.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Giving me your precious time to us, and your session was very informative.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question.
Please.
If someone is doing job from a long time and have a good facility, better, and good salary in etc, while he's starting his own business and becoming entrepreneurship, can you please give me an idea how he can skip your job and come in the proper business? It is a very difficult to leave his job and starting the entrepreneurship business, better. So there would be a calculated risk or what? Please share your opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've gotten your name very well. Amir. Is it Amir? So thank you very much, Amir. Your question, basically, if you're working, they have understood it, if you're working and at the same time you want to start a business. Now, with this, if you're working, sometimes it becomes difficult for you to be able to run your business very well. But in most cases, we say that an entrepreneur sometimes would be able, you know, to venture in that particular idea which you see can be able to work. So if you are working and at the same time you are running a business, you know, that would not be, you not be able to concentrate much on your idea. So my take is that you would rather, you know, if you really want to be able to get the money from the job that you're working, in order to use that particular money as a capital to start maybe the other business, it would be better to have a time frame for you to work within a certain organization. And then after that, you, after getting a lot of experience, probably the same organization that you want to start, the same thing that you want to do is what you're doing in that business, in that organization. You leave that organization in a particular time to be able to nurture your idea to move on. So it's, you know, entrepreneurship in this particular case is not something that you can be able to do to fully to do it, you know, not fully. You need to move away from that particular organization. Satisfied?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Moses. There's one question about, is there any difference between an entrepreneur, leader, and an innovator? And who out of these three has all the properties collectively?
Yeah, that's a good question from Mohsin Ali. Is there a difference between entrepreneur, leader, and innovator? Yes, there is. Who out of these three has all these properties collectively? Is that what the skin you have asked me?
Yes, that's it.
That's good. I've seen it. Thank you very much. Now, there's a difference between an entrepreneur. All right. They said, you know, when you look at these aspects, in most cases, you know, an entrepreneur is the one who takes up all of the two that you're indicating. The characteristics of an entrepreneur is that an entrepreneur is a leader. That's one of the characteristics of an entrepreneur. Another characteristic of an entrepreneur is an innovator. So in this particular case, for you to be able to be an entrepreneur, you need the characteristics of leadership. Now, what do you mean by leadership? A leader is basically somebody who can influence others, you know, in a particular way. You influence others to be able to subscribe to your ideals or to your philosophy. So an entrepreneur is a leader. How is he a leader? Like, for example, if you have innovated a particular, say, a phone, with that particular phone, what happens? The phone you have come up with, you put it onto the market, and you are the only one within your vicinity who has come up with that. You are a leader. Then you convince people that this is a very good phone and you can be able to have it. So you are a leader in your own right. Why? Because you have influenced people with your product. Now, an innovator, you've created something, you've improved something within the organization or within your business. So who out of these three has all these properties collectively? Now, I would say that an entrepreneur has got these two properties. Now, an entrepreneur is a leader, but a leader is not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is an innovator. However, sometimes there are some innovators who can come up with an idea, but in most cases, that idea, you know, cannot be able to put it into society. And that's why we say that an entrepreneur will take up all of these characteristics. Thank you very much, Mohsin. I think I've gotten your name very well.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. There's another question. Please. About how can you reduce the fears, that is, the fears of uncertainties when you're taking a risk?
Sorry, how can you reduce? I didn't get it very well. Very nice. Sorry, I see it. Thank you, Taskin. I think I've seen it. How can you reduce the? Yeah, I got it. I can see it. Now, fear of uncertainties. Can you share your PPT slides with us? I'll share. You can share with them PPT. I see they're asking. How can you reduce the fears while it? What do you mean by fears?
I think it's the risk. So fair risk, maybe.
Fares of, fares of traveling. I don't know. I'm not getting it very well. But anyway, I would like to say that.
It's the fair. Fair as in the scare. It's the
Okay, fine.
FEAR.
Okay, I got it. Now, how can you reduce the fear of the risk? Now, I said that for any entrepreneurs is that you take what we call calculated risks. Now, what are the calculated risks? Now, calculated risks are those risks which are manageable. And the manageable risks are risks which like for example, when you are thinking of going to the market, say for example, you have got a mobile phone known as Samsung, assuming that you are a producer of Samsung or the Samsung mobile type, and maybe the Note, the one that is known as Samsung Note. We know that that is a very expensive mobile. So you want to put it onto the market. I mean, which market can you be able to go? You can't go to that low level market because they'll not be able to afford that particular phone. So whenever you are thinking of the product, think about the market. And that risk, you're going to mitigate the risk, or you're going to have what we call the calculated risks. And then there is another question that I've seen here. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Mudasir. Go with affordable loss to reduce fear of losing. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions, participants? That was a very comprehensive and a detailed session in itself, Dr. Moses.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've seen another one here. Competitive aggressiveness is detrimental to small-scale entrepreneurs, where large-scale competitors may have bigger pursuits to outbid them. Isn't that right? Yes, it's right. Competitive aggressiveness for the small-scale entrepreneur, sometimes it's a very, very uphill task for the small-scale entrepreneur, because when you're trying to capture a market that has got large farms, sometimes by smallness, that puts you off from that particular market, because maybe you're small, you're producing the commodities that you want to market there in small quantities, and these large farms can produce it in masses. And that's why sometimes I'll be able to use China. China has succeeded because whenever they produce most of these particular products, they produce it in very many quantities. And sometimes farms in Africa, like let's say for instance in Africa, you will be able to discover that some of the African countries are even importing the toothpicks, and even the matchbox, Why? Because the farms that are here can produce in small quantities. And those who have done economics will agree with me, we have got economies of scale. So they can benefit from the economies of scale.